Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Great morning. It is the day that the Lord has made. We are choosing to rejoice and be glad in it. I'm Angela Thornton, and this is Wise Word Ministries. Thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it. We do appreciate you joining us this morning. Hello to those who are watching on the replay. Good day, Tracy. Hey, Joyce. Good morning, y'all. It's good to have people that you connect with. My very good friends, Donna and Jerry, were in town for work, and we got to connect last night, break bread, and have a lot of laughs. Y'all, I'm telling you, eating vegan, eating plant based can be really good. We had some of the best vegan food all the way down to macarons dessert. Let me tell you something. Those macarons was good. And my name is Angela, and I confess, I have tried to use during chopsticks, and them little suckers won't work in my hand. But I'm not going to be defeated. Just needed to get that out there. But we resume in James chapter for our study of James. James. It's you never know. I know, right? That's okay, Daisy. You going to Kenya with us next year, right? We going the crew. We're gonna all be together next year in Kenya. They were here for work. Jill was working, so um we James chapter. Oh, what was I saying? You never know what sticks with people. One of my former students reached out and A for effort, I tried, and said she remembered a teaching, something I taught them years ago. She was probably in a class I taught over 10 years ago about binding and loosing. And she said, I want to talk to you because I want to, it's been so long. Can you go back over that with me? Just never know what sticks with people. And because yesterday, was the day of prayer, National Day of Prayer, we had a lot of binding and loosing. That's all I'm going to say about that. But James, chapter 4, 17 short verses, he is concerned about things that you should avoid or whom you should choose. Um, these things concern James. Drawing close to God. He, James is like, hey, Marlene, I need you all to know. And so he's concerned about who is fighting, who is causing the quarrels and the fights. He said, what is the source? What is the source of all of these quarrels and conflicts? Is not the source your pleasures that wage war in your members? Ain't it because you just, don't they come from evil desires at war within you? Aren't you the cause? Y'all, please pray for my roomie. She has been infected, afflicted with the shingles. That is not good. So can y'all please pray for my roommate? Because the shingles is not good. Okay? Shingles ain't good. It's painful out here. I'm gonna have to get a shingle shot because I never had chicken pox. And anyhow, James says, thank you, Annette. You are so kind. James says, listen, you want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it, and you jealous of what other have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Doesn't that sound like what's going on today? Doesn't that sound like what's going on today? He says, listen, you lust. Oh, I won't get shingles if I never had chickenpox, because I never had the chickenpox. I had the measles and the mumps. He said, you lust and you don't have, so you commit murder. You're envious and you can't obtain, so you fight and quarrel, argue all the time. James says, you do not have because you do not ask. And I would submit that many people are saying, well, yes, I have asked, James. Now, I know I done asked a lot of times too, James. I don't know what you're talking about here, brother. But I have most assuredly asked. And I, Mr. James, have asked a lot. And ain't nothing come of my asking. I'm just saying what people be thinking. Some have asked amiss. So James say, let me tell you, I said, this is the cause of this conflict. He is like the correct way for believers, Christians, to have your legitimate needs. See, that's the problem. Your legitimate needs met is by asking God. He says one reason a believer does not receive what he asks for is because you're asking with the wrong motives. Amiss literally means you're asking evilly. So the verb ask, as they say, is in the middle voice, meaning ask for yourself. He goes on to further clarify that sometimes you spend what you get on your pleasure. And he doesn't necessarily mean, well, when you really further qualify and further look the word spend, it could be translated as you squander. Happy birthday, Kitty. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Hush up. Hush up, Joyce. So he says, you squander pleasures. In the Greek, hedonic was where you get the word hedonist from, and hedonistic. He says God is never going to provide for your hedonistic squandering. See, you want to be drinking and carrying on and cavorting. So he says, you ask and do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives, or you ask amiss, so that you may spend it on your pleasures, on your cavorting and carrying on. Instead, because now he's going back to calling y'all brethren, he said, you adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is hostility to God? So he said, instead, he called them adulterous people. He said, you don't know that friendship with the world? Okay. It is adulterous. Is hatred toward God. Anyone who chooses to be friends with the world, an enemy of God. Howsoever, I would also submit that when we think about God, who is his enemy? Now, might he be displeased with people? Well, with the actions of people. Absolutely. But do you believe that the country, China, North Korea, Afghanistan, Pakistan, any of them stands, Uzbekistan, any of them, do you believe that they are literally enemies of God? Do you believe that Jesus does not love the North Koreans, the Chinese, the Russians? As someone said, what ocean, what piece of dirt, what land, what nation, what people did the Lord create that he now hates? And yes, I know we look at the Old Testament, but howsoever, Jesus came to fulfill the law. And for God so loved the world, it did not say America. It did not say for God so loved America only. It did not say evangelical Americans only. It did not say white evangelical Americans only. It said for God so loved the world. It did not say except those in China and Russia and Ukraine and any of, it didn't say that. It said for God so loved the world. And so when we start thinking about that, whew, well, hello, Husna from Indonesia. It said he so loved the world. There's not a nation or land in the universe that God hates. So I don't know where we get this from. Oh, the Russians are going to hell. Really? There ain't nobody in Russia that loves Jesus. There's nobody. Welcome. There's nobody in North Korea that loves the Lord. Just everybody. We become insular and insulated and think from a Western view. So if we've never been anywhere else, or even you don't necessarily have to go to Indonesia, but if you've never interacted with anyone outside of your little niche, you start to think that the only people are the people that you see and know and are familiar with. You start to think that the only way to worship is the way you do it, and that any other way must be witchcraft. Now, you're going to have to write that in English because I do not speak Indonesian. And so you become blind to the vastness of God, to the vastness of his people, to the vastness and way people worship. And so James said, listen, be careful with all that. And so then when we look at verses 5 and 6, when we look at verses 5, good morning, Lady LaWanda. One of the most difficult things to translate, he says, listen, or do you think? So we just got everybody going to speak in different languages this morning. Y'all just not going to talk to me in English. Because I'm going to get my Google Translator when this is over so I can know what you said. I need one of y'all on here to do that for me. Do you think that scripture speaks to no purpose? He jealously desires the spirit which he has made to dwell in us, but he gives greater grace. Therefore, it says God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And basically what James is saying is, listen, do you think scriptures have no meaning? They say that God is passionate, that the spirit he has placed within us should be faithful to him. And he gives grace generously, as the scripture says, he opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Do you honestly think that the word has no meaning? Do you honestly think that somehow he only want to save you in America? But I need you to know the two thieves that were on the cross, the thief and the robber. Yeah, I need you to understand neither one of them were American. Okay? Neither one of them spoke English. Okay? Neither one of them were part of any denomination. Just so we know. There was no one in the Bible American. So we need to get a broader mindset on who God is and what the world is, and who loves him and who he loves and who worships him and how they do it. Culturally may be completely different than you do. That in no way signifies that they don't know him or love him, are not anointed by him and empowered by him and have his spirit dwelling in them. Hey, Danette. So James says to them, listen, this is what I want y'all to do. Submit to God, since he gives grace to the humble. In your humbleness, humble yourselves before God, since he gives grace to the humble. Humble yourself, submit yourself before God. He says to resist the devil and he will flee from you. James never told you to bind the devil. He said resist him. He will flee from you. See, you don't have to run from the devil. You don't have to beat him, run him, chase him, all that other stuff we do. Simply humble yourself before God. Submit to God, to the Spirit of God who is in you. The Spirit that he has placed in you should be faithful to him. Submit to that. Resist the devil. How do I resist the devil? I obey God. I obey his word. And the devil will flee from you. He'll run from you. He did. Now, how about that thought? He says, listen, come close to God. Draw near. And if you have a King James, draw nigh. And he will come close to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts. For your loyalty is divided between God and the world. Now, remember who James was talking to. He was speaking to Jewish Christians, his brethren, those who were born and raised and all they knew was Judaism and had decided to follow Christ. So when he's talking about the world, he's not talking about the world as we talk about the world. He's saying to them, hi, oh my, Husna got her friends. I'm well, how are you? I'm going to say that's our Sunday, but if I messed up your name, that's what James is saying. He's like, listen, you have to decide. You over here, you over there. You can't be double-minded. And that does not mean if you want to have a glass of wine that somehow you're going to hell. Stop that. It does not mean that at all. So then James is saying, let there be tears for what you have done. Let there be sorrow and deep grief. Let there be sadness instead of laughter. He said, humble yourself before the Lord, and he will lift you up in honor. And then he warns about being, he said, listen, the only lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. Who are you to judge your neighbor? Stop judging other folk, looking at people and deciding where they're going. I'm in the U.S. James said, listen, don't speak against one another's brethren. He who speaks against a brother judges his brother and speaks against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge of it. James is warning them. You cannot judge them based on the law that you once knew, because that's not where they are. Don't speak evil against each other. If you criticize and judge others, then you're criticizing and judging God's law. But your job is to obey him. God alone, who gave the law, is the judge. He alone has the power to save or destroy. So what right do you have to determine someone else's fate? I rebuke you and I condemn you to hell. You don't have the authority nor the power to condemn anyone to anywhere. Well, amen for a global audience. Look at the Lord. And then he warns about being overly confident. He says, look here. You who say today or tomorrow we're going to a certain town and we're going to stay there, we will do business, we're going to make a profit. He said, how do you know what life will be like tomorrow? When you get to decide that. How do you know that? Remember, the key is humility. Humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. Yes. Lawgiver, the one who sets in place, the one who constitutes, the one who lays down. God is not only author of the law, he administrates it. He is the executive and the judicial branches. He all of it. He says, now listen, turn this boasting that you have into belief. In addition to there being conflict and, you know, and judgmental attitude toward the brothers, there was a lot of bragging going on. You know, James says, you think you all of that in a bag of chips because you know the Lord. You have decided to follow Jesus. He said, he was like, pump the brakes, time out on that. His attack was direct, which is why Joyce loves James, because James gets to the point. He said, listen, well, thank you very much. It is the same construction found in when we get to 5:1. He said, listen, what you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know. Man's plans are temporary at best, tentative. You have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow because you are not in tomorrow. But the God who says he is forevermore, he is the same today, yesterday, and tomorrow is already in tomorrow. So he knows what the future holds. He knows the end of a thing from the beginning. You just focus on today. Maybe that's why Jesus says to us, take no thought for tomorrow has enough of its own troubles. You worry about today. Your plans are not your own, James reminds them. Time is not your own, James reminds them. In fact, he says, for real, life is not your own. And so then he asked another question. You know, he likes these rhetorical questions. Well, what is your life? What's your life? James says, so what is your life? You don't know what your life would be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, what you ought to say, as my husband's uncle aunt used to say all the time, if it be the Lord's will. And that's what James says. You ought to say, if the Lord's will, we will live and also did this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. Therefore, to one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him is a sin. If you know what to do, and then you choose not to do it, that's a whole problem. James reminds us that the key to avoid arrogance and pride and unnecessary boasting is to maintain a godly perspective. And instead of making these great big old human plans, expand your view to include God. What is it that you want to do? How is it that I can partner with you? So, in place of vain boasting, what you should be saying, if it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. Now, sometimes we use that if it's the Lord's will as a crutch. Let's be real. Well, you know, if it's the Lord's will, no, some things you just need common sense for and not use that as a crutch. So, to make sure that they understood what he was saying, he reiterated it in verse 16. But as you boast in your arrogance, as you boast and brag, he's saying that it must be replaced with God honoring trust, faith, and belief. The cure for boasting is belief. That's what James is saying. And then he says, is anyone who knows the good he ought to do, but doesn't do it, sins. If you know the right thing to do, yet you choose to still do wrong, that's it. Whose husband? What my husband thinks. And James is saying, do good. Do good to others. Do good to yourself. And if you're going to be spiritually mature, you must do the good that you know to do. Now, Daisy, you are right with me. Woo-wee. I love it. They's like, don't come here with no crazy. Stand on what you know the word of the Lord is, and you don't fall prey to tomfoolery. You don't fall prey to craziness. James reminds us of some things. One of the things, this has nothing to do with what I just said, but all it is warfare we're doing. You're called to build and not war. You're an ambassador, you're the executive branch. You're called to build, not war. Here's the thing I have come to understand. Sometimes people just like to talk about haters and enemies because it gives them something to do. And you don't have to take responsibility for what you don't do because the haters abound. But Jesus said, of peace there'll be no end. There'll be no end to peace. And yes, I know there's wars and rumors of wars. And we will talk about that next week. We're going to get into some stuff. But I do want to say this as a lead up to what we're going to talk about next week. Monday, we'll finish James. You know how people always call certain cities dark, like, for instance, Las Vegas, Sin City. I heard someone say something yesterday that I had to sit and really sit with and think, oh my, they are correct. When you say that, there's darkness hovering over the city and all of that. Here's what he said, and the Lord said he is correct. The condition of a city, a region, a neighborhood, a nation is not indicative of how big darkness is, but how much light is not showing up. Well, there's so much darkness over this city. If the city has darkness, it means light has not shown up. Light has decided not to show up, because when there is light, darkness disappears. Darkness dissipates, disappears. You've never walked in a dark room and turned on the light fully, and darkness did not disappear. Even if all you're shining is a flashlight, wherever you shine that flashlight, there is no darkness in that space. So if a city is dark, if a neighborhood, a region, a state, a nation is dark, it is because light has decided to be dim. Light has decided to be dim. But if light shines up in the fullness, in its brightness, you don't have to worry about that. Light has decided to be dim, like a light bulb going out or a candle just flickering. We just gonna shine a little light right here and then blame darkness for everything else. When if we were all who understood that we are the light of the world, we are the salt. We should be seasoning. Nobody should be unseasoning. What he is saying is, let the light that's in you, the love that's in you, shine brighter than the darkness in someone else. You're doing just fine. Let the light, the love that's in you, the hope that's in you, shine brighter than the darkness, the hate in someone else. Salt where there is no flavor. Absolutely. No one wants unseasoned food. I'm just here to tell you. I don't care what your culture is. Nobody wants. The only people I know eat bland food is the British. Anybody eating beans and sausage for breakfast, there's something wrong with you. That's all I'm going to say with that. Nobody wants unseasoned food. So you have to ask yourself, if you're saying my community is dark, have you shown as the light? Thank you. The RX, the prescription, is to be the light. It is not the power of darkness. It is the absence of the light. Nobody wants unseasoned food. And I'm going to tell you, the food we had last night was good and seasoned. And listen, we try to look at everything on the menu. Be the light. Be the light. And stop romanticizing toxicity. That's a whole nother thing for another day. It was called Planta. Lord, she's still talking about mustard green salmon. It was called, I made salmon croquettes the other night. It was called Planta Queen. We went to the Planta Queen, and that one is more of an Asian focus. We're going to try it because Jerry and Don told us to try Planta Cocina, which is more of a Latin focus. But Kitty, you would like them. They're vegan. DC vegan is really good too. We went there for dessert. Baby, those macarons. It was, whew. Kitty, you would like DC vegan too. Our devotional for today. Isaiah 52:7. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that brings good tidings, and publish peace, that brings good tidings of good, that publish salvation. Your calling is to be an encourager, see? To lift people out of the dungeons of despair, to pull them out of their self-made pits. I empower you to drag them out of the quicksand of temptation. Rescue them from the worldly distractions. Grab their hearts in your hands and point them toward Calvary. At the feet of Calvary, their sagging heads and limping hands will be lifted up. They will run into my waiting arms because you pursue them who have no helper. Your feet will be famous in heaven. Get busy liberating, emancipating, delivering the world around you. Declare hope to a dying generations around you. Call them back home. Many are ready to listen. They're tired of their lonely pits and empty pursuits. You are what you do when no one is watching. I reward you in public for what you do in secret. Well, like, you are what you do when nobody watching. Your job is to publish my word any way you can. Put that word in people's hands. It will lead them to me and save me. It will be light. How about that? It will be a light for their life's path and fire to warm them on their journey. I reign forever. No one can challenge me. Proclaim this to the whole world. Live safely in my arms. Well, that's a confirmation. Y'all have a wonderful weekend. See you Monday morning. Thank you to those who joined us from Indonesia. We so appreciate you. We so appreciate you. We'll finish up James on Monday, chapter 5. And then we go do some other stuff. I know you all have heard all these doomsday prophetic words. The world is coming to an end. Judgment started in the house of the Lord and all of that. Send the fire, Lord. Well, if he send the fire, you're going to get burnt too, you know. Just saying. Might not be what you want. Much love. Safe travels, Jerry. Hug to Jana. See y'all Monday morning. Bye-bye. Going to the rowing machine, Kitty. Going to the rowing machine. That's where I'm going now. Jerry made me eat all that food.